the thing is, I love skydiving, but a few years ago, I realized that I might have to be base jumping and paragliding the way that regulation was looking and the way the energy crisis is going, et cetera, et cetera. But
Yeah.
I grew up on a drop zone, and I brought two kids up on a drop zone, or me and my wife brought two kids up on a drop zone. And I really love the community aspect of it as well. And so before regulation shuts us down, before, we've been told, you just can't skydive anymore, I figured I'd try and work out ways and look at what people are doing, what initiatives are out there, to kind of get ahead of the curve, to maybe on the aircraft side of things, running the drop zone emission free, etc. And I think it was from Maxine, she put me in touch with you. Could that be right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Yep.
She mentioned that you guys were already running a drop zone on solar.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely,
You
that
know,
really caught my attention.
it goes back a few years because, you know, I made a very, at the time was a terrifying decision to sell my Twin Otter and migrate to caravans.
Right.
That was back in 2017. You
Okay.
know, and I'm a very competitive market here in Chicago. I've got Skydive
Yeah.
Chicago down the street with 3 Twin Otters. I've got Skydive Midwest up the street with one. And so for me to sell that and in the eyes of a lot of jumpers, especially the four-way guys, you know, that was a big downgrade to a caravan, right? But I was doing it because fuel prices at the time were through the roof. Maintenance costs continued to out of control. So it was a financial decision, but it was also because I've always been a bit of a conservationist. I do what I can, knowing that the profession that I've chosen is not exactly the.
It feels hypocritical, doesn't it? Us sitting here
It's
talking about this, but I think we both want to continue it in the best way possible.
yeah,
That's
and so
a really big move. Yeah.
I think it's you know, I think all we can do is just look for little ways everywhere we can to conserve. And I think if everybody does a little bit of work, it has profound impacts in the bigger picture. So I went, I have a friend of mine that runs a solar company here in Chicago. And so I went solar in my house in 2020.
Yep.
And had a great experience through that. Found that it was economical and you know, you're not going to get rich on solar, but it makes you feel like you're doing the right thing. And it's through the tax incentives and the cash back that you get through the state, it financially works. And so I learned a little bit more as I went through that process, how it works on the residential side. And then we started exploring the idea of doing that on the commercial side in our facility.
And that's what put us in the room right now, because in my ideal drop zone, we have an aircraft that's emission free, that's running on sustainable energy. We have a drop zone that maybe even could run a tunnel sometimes if it worked out its energy load in the right way, you know. And so what you have is one of the key elements of this sustainable drop zone that I've been building. So far, it's in my mind, Doug. But when I heard about you actually running the drop zone on solar, I'm like, right, this is it. It's happening on the ground now.
Yeah.
And the goal of these blog posts, if you like, is to show other people that there are options out there. That if you feel like you want to make a difference, you know, look at what Doug's doing in CSC, and see if it works in your area. So how was it? How was that process of turning it from a residential to a commercial operation?
It was, at least in my community, it was challenging. So in the city of Rochelle, it's somewhat unique that they own all of their utilities.
Oh.
So I'm not dealing with a ComEd or one of the big power providers. I'm dealing with a small utility that's city owned. That created a lot of challenges. There are no commercial operations in the entire city of Rochelle that have solar. And so they had to go in and get all kinds of approval from city council to make all kinds of changes to ordinances and laws to approve that we could have commercial solar. That process took far too long, as anything does government related, right?
And was it an expensive process as well?
It was very costly.
Okay, all right.
It was costly. Now, because of state and federal incentive programs, you know, if if you back out all those numbers and plug in all the incentives and then the utility cost savings going down, for the next 30 years,
Yep.
It does pencil out. It does
Okay.
cost money. The initial outlay of cash was large.
Yep. And so have you figured out the timeline on that? So when does it start?
Yeah,
turning in
it's
your
actually
favor?
it's a little bit better return on the commercial side than it is residential. They say it's 6 to 7 years on the residential side, and it was about 5 years on the commercial side.
Oh, so you're already ahead of it.
Well, we're not. We're only 1 year into it, so
Oh, sorry, 1
it's
year.
about
Yeah.
a 5 year period before we'll start feeling that
Gotcha.
relief. Right now, it's
Right.
just an exchange of dollars. So instead of us paying for the utility, now we're paying off the note on the equipment.
On the
So
equipment,
once
yeah.
we get past that and get the note paid off,
Right.
then it's
4 to 5 years. And this is in
Yeah.
your environment with your restrictions. That's obviously going to change place to place if people are thinking about
Right.
that at their drop zone. All right, so that's just getting it in your area. What about the equipment itself? So what do you actually have on site, and how are you managing do you have solar fields at the drop zone, or are you pulling from the grid that's only being solar supplied?
Yeah, and I'm happy to share some pictures and videos and things that we
Oh,
have.
fantastic.
So
Yeah.
we've got a 20,000 square foot facility, and
Yep.
about 80% of it's covered. The rooftop is covered in panels. So we have 384 panels, and
Right.
I can send you all the specs on it.
That would be
It's
great,
a
and I'll
large
put it after.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a large system with 4 different inverters, and I learned a lot through the process. It was pretty
I
interesting.
bet. I bet. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
obviously the person to come through to find out about this stuff. And so you're using your roof space basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and there
that's
was the skydivers were a little concerned because they're thinking skydivers are landing on roofs, but we've never. Well, I take that back. We've had one person over the years that
gotcha.
landed on the roof.
Yeah, there's always that one. That's
There's
okay.
always one, right?
Yeah.
That's what insurance is for, I suppose.
Nice. So we don't need to put a big fat solar field or an airfield, which is going to be hungry for space maybe anyway. So using existing hangar space,
Yeah.
covered parking. And then the next question would be, you're in Chicago. So what is your operational window? How long do you operate for? Do you operate the whole year round?
We're April through end of October.
All right. And
So
so
we're
the solar works
7
for
months
you.
on, 5 months off.
All right. So would the winter time be tough if you were hoping to operate with the lack of solar energy available?
Yeah, so we don't have a ton of sun in the summertime. I'm sorry, in the
In the
wintertime.
winter, yeah.
And so it does generate enough power for us. The restaurant we have on site stays open year round.
Okay.
So we're able to generate enough power to help offset a lot of the restaurant electrical needs.
Right.
Not entirely. So we're not operating fully on solar.
Understood.
There are times when it's 100 degrees out that we're pulling power from the city and supplementing it with solar. But then there are days when it's 75 and sunny that we're overproducing and actually sending power back to the grid.
Gotcha. And you have some kind of storage unit as well. Yeah, you use batteries or not?
We don't. I wasn't able to make those numbers work. I mean, the cost of there's 2 concerns for me. The upfront cost of the batteries was really high.
Yeah.
And then the space. I just didn't have space for that much battery storage, and that was probably what led to a lot of the back and forth with the community and the city to get approval. Because when we're overproducing power, we're spinning the meter backwards theoretically, so we're selling power back to the grid, right? And that's where it gets tricky with changing all the laws with the utility,
because they want to make their money from it, of course.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. But during the summer, percentage wise of your energy, what would you say? Have you kind of got a rough number on that?
We're seeing about a 45% decrease in our electric demand.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that's
a huge chunk.
and I've learned a lot about electrical, the cost of electricity and demand costs when we have peak demands in the middle of July and August when it's 95 degrees and we've got the whole RV parks running, the restaurants running, all the air conditionings are running, and our peak demand exceeds certain limits. The electricity gets very expensive once when you exceed that peak limit. So now our peaks are reduced, which brings our overall annual cost of the kilowatt hours down quite a bit. So that's what's been the savings.
Sounds like it gives you breathing space at times that was a struggle before.
Yeah.
Very nice. Obviously, if I was going to build my ideal drop zone, I'd have a bunch of passive cooling and heating in the design features as well. But yeah, I think we're still a little ways. What I'm looking for is someone to throw down a huge chunk of cash and say, Pete, you got the ideas. You know, let's just put this thing together.
Yeah, let me know if you find that guy, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Or her, you know, him or her, they're out there.
Or her, sure.
Yeah, nice. Anything else you want to share about the process? Like the maintenance on it, is that pretty easy on that size of operation?
Yeah, there's really no maintenance. Cleaning is one thing that if we're not getting much rain, we'll see a decrease in productivity if it gets a lot of dust on the system.
Right.
But we have some decent rains that'll come through and clean that off, and it's not been a problem.
And are you looking to have
to
it runs itself, yeah? And what about the upgrades on it? How long? Because obviously technology is moving at a pretty fast pace in this field. Let's say in 5 years' time, you know, you just broken even, and then you see a much more efficient PV cell out there. Have you thought that through?
I have, and what I've learned is the panels themselves are, well, they're not inexpensive. It's not the biggest part of it's the installation and it's the inverters. That's where the money's at. So changing out the panels, if it makes sense and we're able to produce a lot more power through newer technology, I would certainly consider that for sure.
We'd like to think that other drop zones out there with enough sun could be moving to that. Is there any advice that you want to give them?
Yeah, I think, I guess, you know, this was financially a decision for me that was driven by finance, right? Because I was tired of spending, you know, $8,000 and $10,000 a month on electric bills. But I think we also need to look at it from the point of what's the right thing to do. And so that's finding that balance. And I think looking at alternative forms of energy and different ways of running the business to be more streamlined helps wherever we can. I mean, we've got to reduce our demand on fossil fuels wherever we can. You know, the one thing I would add to this whole thing though too is we've kind of woven our green approach into our marketing a bit, and it seems to have worked quite well. Us being, you know, operating in fuel efficient aircraft, you know, myself, my director of operations, we both drive electric vehicles. I've got solar at home. I've got solar at work. So we built that into our marketing message a bit. And the demographic that we serve, that message seems to strike a chord with them. And, you know, there's a bunch of different things that impact people's buying decisions, but I feel like that if
it makes dollar sense, you know, if you've got more clients coming through the door, that might be the decision maker for someone.
Yeah. Excellent. So if drop zones are out there that are kind of, you know, thinking about that, I've seen a positive impact just from a marketing perspective.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great, Doug. Short and sweet. Thank you, man.